going, are there any questions about what we've done so far? Okay, then, let's get going. Today, we are going to be looking at what I call question order. And there are many ways of displaying or not displaying, skipping questions, repeating questions as you may need to. And they can be very useful as you design your survey and make things easier for your respondents. So the first thing we're going to look at is what's called display logic. And it's probably very much what you're thinking of. It's whether or not you are going to display either a question or display certain answers or not. And what's good about any kind of logic that you see in Qualtrics is it all works the same way. So whether you're doing display logic on questions, on answers, or anything else requiring logic, all the dialogues and everything works the same way. So display logic can be applied to a question or to individual answers. So let's first take a look at applying it to specific questions. Here, I've already made up a very basic survey, and as you should be asking in your surveys, are you 18 years of age or older? Yes or no? And then do you consent to completing this survey? Well, of course, if the person is not 18 years old, if they say no, you want to skip them right to the end. You want to boot them out. If they are 18 years of age or older, then you want to send them to the next question. Do you consent to completing the survey? Yes, no, maybe. So really, it's this second question here that is going to be displayed or not displayed. So to do that, you click on it, and you can come down here to display logic. And you get this dialog, and you'll see this kind of thing in many places throughout Qualtrics. And you can base this on embedded data, which is kind of what we've done, a little similar to what we've done with Python. You'll see a little bit more of that when we do loop and merge. Quotas, information, contact lists, IP, true, false, etc. Probably 9 times out of 10, it's going to be based on a question that you have. So then you select the question, are you 18 years of age or older? And what choice? Yes or no? So if they say, as it says here, display this question only if the following condition is met. So you want to say yes. And then you have is selected, is not, is displayed or not displayed, because you can base the display on something that was or was not displayed previous to that. There's all kinds of ways that you can string things along. But as I say, 9 times out of 10, this kind of a setup is what you're going to want. It's either going to be selected or not selected. We'll talk about this in page in a moment. So we'll click save. Go to preview. Are you 18 years of age or older? We'll say yes. And ask you consent to complete it, which is what we wanted. Let's do start survey. And this time we'll say no, just to see what happens. And see, it goes right to the next question. It skipped the consent question. Of course, it's not what you would do in a normal circumstance, but you get the idea here. So they said no here, it skipped this question and went right to here. You can also, as I mentioned, do display logic on individual response options. And you do that, you just click on it. And then you go down to add display logic. And you can see it has all the answers there. You do add logic. And you see question, select a question. Let's just say, are you 18 again? And then that works on that particular, that specific, one specific option. And you see it has that little icon there, so you know, you hover over it and it says has display logic. And up here, well, when you look here, you see the display, this question logic. When you're doing you can edit them, of course. You can base this on more than one criteria. You just click on the green plus here, and you get another line. And then this first one is either and or. And so this question, that wouldn't necessarily make sense, but are you 18 years of older is selected, and this next question is selected. So both of these conditions have to be met. If you do or, then one or the other has to be met for the question to be displayed. That's kind of where some people get a little mixed up, because the computer meaning of and or are a little bit different sometimes from the human way of thinking about them. Might have also noticed that there's this other thing, move to a new logic set. And if you are familiar with SQL or more sophisticated search language, say in the library catalog, or Google can use it as well. This is kind of like putting parentheses around this query and then this one, so that this whole piece is evaluated as one thing. And then this whole piece is evaluated as another. And since they're joined with and, they both, everything has to be met. And you can do or, and if, or if, and then add even yet another logic set. If you're going beyond two like this, put it down, go for a cup of coffee, go for a jog, take a nap, and come back to it and think about it a little bit more, because it's starting to get rather complicated, as you can see. And then, if you don't get it exactly right, then it can really mess up your survey. Of course, you want to be able to test this. So then you have to think of every single possibility, test it, and make sure it gets rather complicated. So anything beyond what you see here. As I say, think about it again. I'm going to take these out because the original one was 5. I just want to show you what this in age does. I'm going to save it for now. I'm going to take another look. And as you can see, there's just the one question here. Even though this one and the next one are in the same block, and everything in the same block is usually displayed on the same page. And goes to the next question here. Edit this. And click in page. As you can see, the logic up here changed. You can only do this when it's based on a question rather than embedded data or anything else. Save that. Preview. I would say yes. And you see how the next question just pops up before you had to hit the submit button. This is nothing more than, how it looks to your respondent. It doesn't change the data. It doesn't change how anything else works. It's just, I guess, cosmetic. So whether you use it or not is entirely up to you. Are there any questions about that display logic? Okay. Skip logic is very similar. Rather than, I'm sure you've seen in surveys that you completed yourself, there's a question, like here, are you 18 years of age? If you say yes, then go to the next question. If no, then skip to, question 20. And whether you use display logic or skip logic really depends on how many questions you don't want the person to answer. If it's just 1 or 2, then you can use the display logic. If it's a whole bunch or you want them to go to a whole nother section of your survey, then you want to use the skip logic. Now, the thing with skip logic is that it only works within the same block. So if the person says they are not 18 years of age, you want them to skip this question. This time, the skip logic goes with this question rather than the one that's after that's being displayed. And click on skip logic, and lo and behold, it looks the same. It can only be based on a question, but you can go to another question within the same block. You can go to the end of that block, which is really the beginning of the next one. We're going to look at this in a second. Or you can send them to the end of the survey. So if the person says no is selected, you end of block the right then. No. You can see it skipped right over that second question, do you consent? And this. End of survey is, you'll see, obviously it's gonna go right to the end of the survey if you say no. Thank you for taking the time spent in the survey. So, as I say, the logic and the dialogue windows and things work the same, which makes your life a lot easier. And again, whether you use skip or display really depends on how many questions you don't want the person to answer. Here, this was very simple. It was just one question. Or, if they're not 18, you want to skip them, to the end of the survey because they shouldn't be, they're not of the age of consent. And then, especially depending on your particular situation. Are there any questions about skip logic or display logic? Okay, yeah, it's not a real complicated thing. We can also randomize individual options as well as randomizing all of the questions within a block. And again, either way works. They both work the same way. So we're going to click on the block and come over here to question randomization. And the default, of course, is no randomization. Randomize the order of all questions is exactly what you might think is. It just takes all the questions and randomizes them for each responder. Then only X number, let's say you have 10 total questions, but you only want to show them 4. It will show 4 at random out of the 10. The advanced randomization is where things get interesting. So on this side, you have each of the questions in that block in the order that they're there. One thing is nice is you can move the order around. Put it back the way it was. And you have several options of how to do things on the right-hand side. You can click on the questions. And what will happen here is that each of these first 3 questions will be randomized. And then the last 2 will always be shown in this order after those first randomized 3. And do something like this as well. So first one will be a random choice of one of these 3. Then it will always be this question, and then of the other 2 will be in here. Depending on your particular application, why you're doing your survey and how, that might be something you want to do. Back. random subset. Again, you can that. So random in two from these questions. And so your response will come in, they'll see, where are you employed? Please indicate your occupation. All of them will see those two questions in that order. And then randomly, two of these questions in a random order. This little button down here, evenly display questions. We'll see this again in a couple of weeks when we do survey flow. But probably 9 times out of 10, or even 99 out of 100, you want to click that option. And what that means is that each of these, as much as possible, each of these questions will be displayed the same number of times. If this is not checked, then each time a respondent comes in, Qualtrics will randomly pick 2 of these questions and display them to the respondent. The next respondent comes in, randomly pick 2 others. The next one comes in, randomly pick 2 out of these. It's entirely possible, especially if you have a much longer list, that some of those questions might only get displayed once or twice. And certainly you're going to be wanting more out of that. So evenly displayed questions will, as much as possible, as I say, depending on how many questions and how many respondents, it may not work out perfectly, but it'll be as close as you can get. All of these questions being displayed the same number of times throughout all of your respondents. One thing you need to remember in doing this is clicking on this edit count thing. Right now it's all zeros because we haven't answered the question. Nobody's responded to this. But as each question gets shown to a respondent, this little counter will go up. Keep going up. And then, so even as you're testing, these will continue to climb. And so what you need to do as you're testing, and especially before you actually distribute your survey, is click on reset all counts. And that will reset all of these back to 0. And it's like you're starting new. Very important to remember. And it's hard to remember. You're doing a million other things, getting your survey going. And as you're testing, you already know that this works the way you want it to. But as I say, Qualtrics doesn't know it won't change from where you're doing your testing when you're actually starting. I will click save, and these, again, these counts, these element counts, it's this edit count link right here. And that doesn't show up unless you click evenly display, because of course it's irrelevant if you don't do that. And then this last one is exclude items. It's not random. if you have a list of, say, 50 questions, you can, so if I do that, now indicate your occupation isn't going to be shown to your respondents at all, period. So it's a little odd that this is here, because if you don't want to show it to any of your respondents, why not just delete it from the survey? But I suppose there's some reason they have for putting this in there. And of course, questions per page show how many questions per page. That's not a big deal. And you, as I say, you can do some neat things with this. As I say, with some surveys, if you have a lot of questions, randomizing the questions and randomizing the responses is often done when you don't want people just clicking through just to get to the end so that they can get their $5 Amazon coupon or something. Close that. And you can, so if you click on the question, come down here, there's choice randomization. And it's the same thing. And works the same way. With the choices, you get this extra option of randomly reverse choices. So you can what this does is it just reverses the order. So this is the default order. For the first person, the next person, it will be flipped around. And then flip back, and randomly as each respondent comes in. And again, you want to click this 99 times out of 100. You want to click this so that the order is about the same as much as possible, so that it's not this order, 75 times and reverse order 25 times. Or most likely you'd want this to be 50-50. But all the other parts work exactly the same as we just saw. Are there any questions about randomization? Whether it's choices or questions? And as I say, you can randomize all the questions in a block. And once we get to survey flow, you'll see you can even randomize entire blocks. And randomization works exactly the same. So, questions? Somebody raised their hand. Looks a little weird. I don't see the same things that you do. Gwen is asking, can you alphabetize? You mean get it to alphabetize, say like this list, and put it in alphabetical order? Yeah, if that's the way you type it in. there isn't, you know, since this is in here, there's no way to go in and, say, do this in alphabetical order. So you have to first, design, enter all of these various options in alphabetical order to start off with. Yeah, you have to do that yourself. So that's why, as I say, a lot of times it's easier to initially do all your questions in something like Word or Notepad, because it's a lot easier to edit and move things around in that first. And of course, you can just always copy and paste and then come to edit multiple and just paste it in here without having to, retype it every time. Okay, next thing I'm going to look at is called loop and merge. And loop and merge is a way of asking the same questions repeatedly. It's very useful, especially when you don't necessarily know how many times you need to ask those questions ahead of time. So there's a couple of ways you can do loop and merge. One thing is that the questions that you want to loop through need to be in a different block from the question on which it's based. So you see here, I say, please select your 3 favorite flavors of ice cream. And then in the next block, I have, how often do you eat? And we're gonna look at this, and why do you like? So these 2 questions are going to be repeated 3 times based on what choices the respondent makes out of these 5. Now, of course, you want to know that you want to make it explicit to your respondents which flavor you're talking about. So you can come down here and go to typed text, loop and merge. I haven't turned loop and merge on yet. Go to your main question here. That's not even fine. Don't get old people, it sucks. Loop and merge, turn it on. Based off a question, and then you select the question. Please select your 3 favorite flavors of ice cream. And you have, all of them, display choices, not displayed, selected, unselected. 9 times out of 10, you're going to want selected. And you see it puts in field 1 the various options. See what you can do with field 2 in a minute. Save. And now you can see there's this little icon up here. It says loop and merge, so you know that there's loop and merge on there. As I say, you want to display to your respondents which flavor they're asking about. So we'll go to type text, and see loop and merge fields, and then field 1. That here as well. you know. Chocolate, strawberry, and rocky road. Chocolate, strawberry, and rocky road. Pretty nice. Makes her life a lot easier. Otherwise, without being able to do this, you would have to, um, repeat this block 3 times and figure out some way of finding out which flavor they're talking about. Of course, you can, have many more questions in here. You can even type text on the individual responses if that's something that's useful to you. Now, this way was based off how many choices they made in this initial question. And we told them 3. And of course, you could put some validation so that they only answer 3, up to 3, or have to answer 3, or no more than 3, etc. Sometimes you don't necessarily know. If you're doing research on families, well, you want to know, every family has a different number of children. You need to know how many. And you'll want to ask probably the same questions about each of their children. And so your first question is going to be, how many children do you have? And then you can ask them, what's their name, how old are they, and whatever else you want to loop through. So we'll click on the block that we want to loop. Click on the merge, turn it on. Based off of the question, we'll select the question. And we'll come down to how many children do you have? You can see this dialog gets a little bit different because it's a open-ended question. You can change how many loops, so you can have up to 5 kids, you can have 10, you can have 3, whatever makes sense. I'm just going to leave it right now for 5. And let's just take a look at it just for right now. See here, it's, where's your child's name? How old is your child? Well, which one? Kind of like the ice cream question. But unlike with the ice cream question, you already had the names in there. Here you don't. So what we can do is down here, edit that. And in field 2, you can write first. Save. Now Come into that. Now you see where field 2 is filled in. On that space there. Can loop and merge with a filled in response. Guessing that's kind of what we're doing here, Claire. You have to know how many times. You have to have some way of knowing how many times you might need to do the loop. So in the first question here, you knew it wasn't going to be more than 5. And Qualtrics will count how many you selected here. So it knows there's 3. Down here we have how many children you have. So it's going to take that number and go through the loops. I hope that answers your question. If not, please say so. Great, man. First child, second, third. Now you don't really have time today, but you can get a little bit fancier and loop again so that you can actually finagle it, to use a technical term, to get the actual child's name in here. You know, the parent would have to fill in each child's name, and then you can loop again through all of this. Might have noticed as we were going through this, other type text that you can put in and use are the loop counts. Current loop number we'll look at. And then the total number of loops. Sometimes those can be pretty useful too. See, it's 1 and 3 because we put in 3, so that's the total number of loops that we can go through. Oh, great. Wonderful. Qualtrics has been a little weird today to begin with. Here, close that. Publish it. So, first loop out of 3. The second loop out of 3. Third loop out of 3. Now that could come in handy as you're, designing your survey. Those are also, what we call embedded data, which we're going to look at, I think, next week. And so you can do, through the survey flow, you might be asking people factual questions, like a little test. And maybe want to know how many times they tried it before they got a certain number correct. Just how many times they felt like they. Are there any questions about loop and merge, display logic, randomization, life in general? I don't claim to be an expert on that. Okay, then, that's all for today, and I will see all of you, or see all of you next week, next Thursday at 3. All right, have a good week, everyone. And as always, if you need help during the week, you know how to contact me.